Good afternoon, everyone. I guess it's the last session and the end of the 2 days event that we've been going throughout yesterday and today. So I believe there couldn't be a better closure for these 2 days than a session on a topic that continues to gain momentum. And we were happy to see several side discussions, panel discussions, and questions around in the last 2 days, that is the regulatory conversions. And actually having this topic of medical device single audit program it sits right there at the intersection of the global regulatory conversions and the practical implementation, where global regulators have actually made it happen and have decided to align all together on one audit to meet requirements of several jurisdictions. So this is really an example of institutionalization of reliance, and that reliance can happen in practice and not only in just playbooks or theories, but it can actually happen in practice. In order to learn more about the MDSAP, I'm happy to welcome our speaker, Marie. Okay, just before the first session, I've been asked to ask you to scan to the second question for a chance to have a winner for the 2 days AfriQuest. Everyone has answered the question? Okay, so I guess we'll leave them to answer while as well we introduce our speaker for today's session. I'd like to introduce Marie Bushra. Marie is a regulatory professional with over 16 years of experience, many of which are covering eventually the African regulatory landscape. So she comes with a broad of experience for Africa. She's currently the Regional Manager, Regulatory Affairs and Policy for Middle East and Africa in Johnson & Johnson. And she works closely with different local and international trade associations to fulfill a passion that we all share, that is the advocacy to streamline regulatory process across the continent. So please join me in welcoming Marie to give us an overview of the MDSAP program.
Thank you, Rana. Good afternoon, everyone. As Rana mentioned, our today topic, one of our last topics, is the Medical Device Single Audit Program, MDSAP. So I'll try to be quick. I know it's the end of the day, but let's say we keep the best for the last. So I'll take you quickly through the MDSAP history, some of the terminology of the MDSAP framework, benefits to manufacturers and benefits to authorities, and some key takeaways. So what is MDSAP? MDSAP, as you may all know, it's the Medical Device Single Audit Program. It allows of a single regulatory audit for the quality management system of medical devices manufacturer to satisfy the regulatory requirements of multiple regulatory jurisdictions. Audits are conducted by audit organizations that are authorized by the participating authorities. So it all started in 2012 as a small working group under the IMDRF, with a statement of cooperation between Australia, Brazil, Canada, and USA health authorities. A pilot program ran from 2014 through 2016. In the meantime, Japan became also a participating regulatory authority. In 2016, the pilot program moved into a fully operational program with full implementation in 2017. In 2019, we've witnessed Canada discontinuing completely their Canadian medical device conformity assessment and relying solely on the MDSAP. So as I mentioned, MDSAP members are Health Canada, Anvisa Brazil, US FDA, Australia TGA, and Japan PMDA. These 5 regulatory authorities form the MDSAP Regulatory Authority Council, the RAC. The RAC is the decision-making body of the MDSAP. It provides direction, oversight, and resources to support the MDSAP program development and expansion. It is to note that the MDSAP is based on the ISO 13485, the quality management system of the medical device manufacturers, in addition to specific requirements from the participating regulatory authorities. So the MDSAP was developed to encourage and support global harmonization, increase efficiency, and reduce duplication of efforts. It promotes consistency, predictability, and transparency of the regulatory programs. And then we have the MDSAP official observers, EU being one of the official observers, Singapore Health Science Authority, UK MHRA, and the World Health Organizations. Official observers observe and or contribute to RAC activities while not having equal authority. So the final authority and the final decision always remain within the RAC, the Regulatory Authority Council, the 5 Regulatory Authority Council. And then we have the affiliate members, and we've seen in recent years increasing interest from our African regulatory authority in becoming and filing applications for becoming affiliate members, like Kenya Pharmacy and Poison Board, and most recently SAPRA in South Africa. So affiliate members engage with but do not participate in the decision-making process of the MDSAP. Affiliate members can utilize the MDSAP audit reports and certificates. They have access to the list of participating facilities, and they can contact them for information, certificates, and audits. They can also obtain the MDSAP audit reports by contacting the manufacturers. And they report their level of usage of their privilege to the RAC annually. In a nutshell, being an affiliate member, so affiliate members are regulatory authorities that shows interest in MDSAP and wishes to engage with MDSAP and utilize the MDSAP certificates, audit reports, and deliverables. So if a medical device manufacturer wishes to export their product into the countries of these regulatory authorities that are affiliate members, these authorities will have easy access to the MDSAP audit reports, deliverables, certificates, which will accelerate the market access of that product and enhance the patient access to the product and accelerate the evaluation process of the product. So different authorities rely and use the MDSAP program differently. So as I mentioned earlier, we have Canada, for example, discontinuing completely their conformity assessment system and relying only and depending solely on the MDSAP. We have other authorities like, for example, the Republic of Korea, where an on-site manufacturing site audit is a requirement. Now, when a manufacturer comes and presents their MDSAP certificate, they provide some exemptions and they can exempt from the on-site audit and rely only on the documentation audit or quality management system documentation audit. EU, we mentioned that the EU is an observer, is one of the observers. However, there is increasing interest from the EU in the MDSAP program, and we have seen recently the European Medical Technology Industry Association, MedTech Europe, calling for the EU to join the medical device single audit program as a full member, believing that being an MDSAP full member will reduce regulatory complexity and the regulatory burden, enhance regulatory harmonization, and of course, grant faster patient access. So adopting and relying on MDSAP offers benefits for both parties, industry and authorities. So from industry perspective, it minimizes the medical device manufacturer disruption due to multiple regulatory audits from different authorities and dealing with the findings from these audits. Instead, the manufacturer works on continuously enhancing their quality management system towards one set of requirements, that is the MDSAP audit requirements. And I think most importantly, it reduces the unintended economic consequences associated with the increased cost of site inspection. That is one of the challenges that manufacturers have with the manufacturing site audit, which represent a potential barrier to trade and have negative consequences on the level of access of the innovative medical technology to the African patient. And when it comes to authorities, the MDSAP offers one audit that shows compliance with standards for up to 5 stringent regulatory authorities. So it offers both benefit to patient health and patient access with ease of entry into multiple markets. It avoids duplication of work for sure, so better use of the capacity at health authority level and more capacity building and more focus on more important tasks at health authority level instead of duplicating and reinventing and recreating auditing processes. Last but not least, and as a recap, MDSAP Reliance provide a harmonized, transparent, and predictable mean for oversight of medical device manufacturers' quality management system. Affiliate members can benefit by having access to reports and deliverables. Non-members can also benefit by relying on MDSAP certificates in lieu of performing local on-site inspection through unilateral reliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marie, for this overview that highlights the benefits of the MDSAP and the call for action, which I believe it's becoming imminent to leverage these international programs in our regional and national frameworks. So we're going to have a brief panel discussion. For this, I'm going to ask the panelist, Dr. Khadija from NAFDAC, to join us on stage for the panel, as well as Khani Sili from SAPRA and Marie from Johnson & Johnson. So as Marie has explained, the MDSAP is eventually a true example of reliance in practice, and that eventually reduce duplication, promotes consistency, and strengthen patient safety. Maybe I'm gonna take one step back and start with you, Khani Sili, and based on your experience with SAPRA engaging in the regulatory jurisdiction for their own. So you have a process of the ISO 13485 that eventually that a timeline document for ISO 13485 compliance. So in this document, SAPRA is somehow leveraging the ISO certification to streamline the establishment registration license that is part of your regulatory approvals. So can you take us through this journey and how leveraging the ISO 13485 has been crucial for you for the establishment licensing?
Thank you for that question. As you mentioned, so with SAPRA, we have used a more of a phased approach. So I'll take you back to the beginning. So in 2017, when we first started licensing establishment, we had given our distributors, manufacturers, a period of 5 years to get ready in terms of submitting to have your license, but not having to submit ISO 13485 certificate. And due to the readiness of the industry, we further extended that to 3 more years. Now, with the document that you will see there's now a mandatory requirement. Those who have renewed, there's a certain timeline for them to start submitting, right? And what we've seen is that by also leveraging in terms of those who already have ISO 13485 certificates, those who have gone through MDSAP, it in fact streamlines our licensing and also enhances the regulatory oversight. Now, there's a few challenges with that. One being that within South Africa, we don't have enough conformity assessment bodies, or some of you may know, notified bodies. Also, in terms of compliance costs that come in, you have companies within South Africa who won't be able to pay for those. And this is where, leveraging MDSAP and also as a regulator, we need to become, this phased approach becomes quite critical, because now you have to ensure that you allow for a transition for those who can't afford to go through certification on how they can come up with processes to actually get certified. So those are some of the challenges that we are having. And hence also this phased approach is also to try and engage with the likes of DTI, to try and also engage with international conformity assessment bodies to establish offices within South Africa to fully support. So I do think that, creating this whole process and having a more phased approach is actually assisting our industry, and also as a regulator, we can have confidence to ensure that those who have submitted, that we had first given the 5 years, they are now fully compliant and can be able to assist in terms of having a fully certified quality management system.
Thank you so much, Khani. I believe what you mentioned is a clear indication that having the good regulatory practice and many elements that you've implemented that you mentioned now, the transition period, the involvement of the stakeholders, having these in the framework of the regulatory authority are a prerequisite to drive reliance forward and have this channel of communication. So thank you for that. Maybe I would move to Dr. Khadija, and again, talking about reliance. Does NAFDAC have any available pathway that are specific for reliance, that are implemented by NAFDAC, and how this could impact the deployment of reliance, and how could this accelerate the access to the medical devices to the Nigerian market?
Okay, thank you very much. For us in NAFDAC, we have an overarching regulatory reliance policy that speaks to all the products we regulate and speaks to the different functions that we may need to deploy reliance to achieve. Talking about laboratory assessments, laboratory testing, talking about market authorization, post-market surveillance alerts and all of that. So we have an overarching regulatory reliance policy. And so specifically for coming to medical devices, including IVDs, what we have, because that reliance policy is also evolving. What we had before we had the WHO GBT assessment had to be reviewed to capture some of the things that we learned from the assessment. And so before the assessment, the major reliance pathway we were deploying for IVDs was the WHO collaborative registration procedure. So now with the GBT assessments, we've been advised to look at other areas that we could actually rely on. So what we had been doing before was only using the QMS certification, provided by applicants, in lieu of our own physical on-site visits for inspections, But going forward now, we'll be looking at other areas, other reliance, other authorities that we could rely on. We have MOUs with a few NRAs, SAPRA, EDA, we have with South Korea, so those are some of the areas that we'll be looking to leverage, in our reliance for medical devices, including IVDs. But what we are deploying effectively now is the WHO CRP for IVDs. Thank you.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, having these legal frameworks in place really helps because it needs to be structured and governed from top to bottom. And then it will help facilitating the actual implementation on ground. So seeing these MOUs, we hope it will be the start to an effective and efficient implementation of reliance in practice. Maria, I'd like to go back to your presentation. You mentioned how MDSAP has been really a deal breaker for global regulators in order to streamline their inspection process as well as to avoid duplication, but also it has helped manufacturers by streamlining their process, not to have to address, as you mentioned, several rounds of reviews, each that comes with their questions and their findings. So how do you think this could help, let's say, the regulatory authorities in Africa in order to promote conversions and by relying on the MDSAP, especially that you have a lot of emerging markets in Africa that do require physical site inspections. So how could this global example be beneficial for the African region?
Yeah, I think the MDSAP provides an opportunity for national regulatory authorities to align and leapfrog the maturity gap that they have, especially most of our countries are emerging in terms of regulation. So I think it provides a very good opportunity to align the requirements with the internationally recognized quality management system requirements of the 5 participating regulatory authorities. So instead of like recreating and reinventing a new audit process, I think it provides a very good backbone to rely on, and that also frees up, capacity at health authority level, especially again for emerging regulatory authorities. There is always capacity constraints and capacity limitation, so it frees up space to focus maybe on different and more important tasks and creating maybe more important process, including those that are dealing with post-marketing surveillance, vigilance, etc. So I think it's a very good example that national regulatory authorities can benefit from different fronts. One of them is, as I mentioned, aligning their regulatory requirements and close the maturity gap, and also the maturity level and capacity building and reliance.
So it's all about regulatory efficiency and better regulatory
Absolutely.
outcomes that we're all looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah, Khanisila, I know SAPRA as well is an affiliate member of MDSAP. So how was this experience? Do you have some, let's say, insights about the process to become affiliate member? How did this help SAPRA in terms of the regulatory frameworks, and any recommendation in this way for other African countries that might look as well to become affiliate member for MDSAP?
Yes. I think the process was slightly easy, which many would not expect it to be easy. But I mean, we prepared some documents. We had to present also to the MDSAP chairperson and the founding countries. And the first thing is to ensure that you do understand your medical device framework, and you present that to them. And in terms of how it has assisted us is that within even the feasibility study, it's easy to access the reports. As an affiliate member, you might not go to the inspections, but you can be actually, you can access those reports. You can also ask some questions, should there be any questions arising from the reports. In terms of the certificates as well, where you need validation of a certain certificate, countries like Health Canada, where one of our products was manufactured from, was able to engage us as a regulator. And from an emerging market regulator, it actually creates that trust whereby you can be able to leverage from a stringent authority, and an authority that has been doing inspections for a very long time in terms of devices. And we found that to be quite good. And the relationship that we have, we attended one of the MDSAP meetings, and we could be able to share also our challenges. And after that meeting, they came back to us and they were able to assist us in some of the challenges that we were having. So to the regulators who are still not part of MDSAP, I would urge them to also be part of MDSAP, and also for regulators within Africa to actually align. We still have disparities in terms of some regulators are doing GMP inspections, and while, as we know, medical devices is ISO 13485. So once we all align, we can be able to also share and have joint assessments, and actually African regulators could be the ones assessing local manufacturers as the lead auditors. So I think we all should, be aligning and agreeing on that. So that's my call to action to African regulators and manufacturers.
Thank you, Khani. And I believe we join your message as well with this call for action, and we hope to see more and more regulatory conversions and leveraging of these international standards that are there. Dr. Khadija, I know as well Nigeria has been recently actively engaged with IMDRF by becoming an affiliate member. So could this call for action, potentially becoming an affiliate MDSAP member, could be on the agenda of NAFDAC, especially that you mentioned that you already implement some form of reliance with the CRP, but also as well a risk-based approach with the site audits. So could this be, let's say, a potential solution for the future or alternative for the future that NAFTA might consider?
Okay, so like I have said repeatedly, our medical device framework is evolving. So we are very open to we are open to collaboration. We are open to any initiatives that will improve our efficiency. So at the moment, we haven't thought of MDSAP because we are currently aligning with INDRF. And as an agency, we actually have a lot of different initiatives, going on. So yeah, maybe in the future we may consider that. I mean, there is always there is always a benefit, to harmonizing and having convergence and all of that, which we all have seen. That has helped us in other areas of our activities, So it's something that may come up in the future, but right now we have a good deal on our plate.
No, that's great to hear that there's some hope for the future,
Yes.
because it will eventually, let's say, accelerate the access at the end of the day for the patients. So, and as you mentioned, the technology is fastly evolving. So we're playing, let's say, chase up with the innovation
We're
and
catching
regulation.
up, yeah.
Catch up. Exactly. So let's hope as well this would help expediting the access. Marie, any comments from your side on this point, from manufacturer's perspective, and what is a manufacturer's dream, let's say, for the region among all the regulatory activities that every RA professional is overwhelmed with, handling big regions, multiple markets, emerging regulations, as we have seen?
Well, I would probably share my view of adopting MDSAP, the benefit of adopting MDSAP to authorities from manufacturers' perspective, let's say.
Yeah.
Because that's what we see and what we experience day to day in our works, right? Because audits are usually time-consuming, comes with high cost for sure, and I think neither of us wants that, right? So for authorities, they maybe need time for other important tasks, as I just mentioned, instead of duplicating and reinventing the wheel. But for me, as a manufacturer, instead of spending all that cost on something that has been already done, that is very robust and that there is a reliance system for, I would rather, invest that in the country by bringing more innovative technology, by bringing training to HCPs to use those products. So I think adopting MDSAP will generate will make the continent more attractive, let's say, to launching new products and bringing the continent up to speed with all the innovative technology that is being launched around the world and in international markets.
Yeah. Thank you, Marie, for that. Yeah, and as you mentioned, R&D is a crucial, let's say, activity that manufacturers engage with.
And as you mentioned, it's going very fast, and we really need to catch up. And I think that it's providing a very good tool that will encourage manufacturers to invest more in the continent.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one or two questions from the audience. Any questions for our panelists? Yes, Simon.
Thank you. Okay, from what I'm hearing, I agree with from a overseas manufacturer. Let's get back to local manufacturing. If I'm a local manufacturer and I only want to manufacture for the African continent, that MDSAP is no different to ISO 13485 because they're both ISO 13485, and I certainly am not going to have I'm not going to afford the cost of MDSAP, because MDSAP will cover Canada, Japan, one of the five, their regulations. MDSAP will not cover the Egyptian, the African, the South African regulations. So although you're going to accept MDSAP for importers, great. It'll be a huge cost saving for the overseas manufacturer, but it's not going to work for the local manufacturer. Are we in agreement with that?
Yeah,
I think that's something we need to make sure everybody clearly understands.
Yeah, I believe what we're talking here is about proposing it as an alternative, not as the only option available. So authorities will always,
100%. If I want to export to Europe, I'm going to have MDSAP anyway. But if we want to build local capacity for our local continent, we're not going to be able to afford it.
Of course.
And it's not going to cover the requirements for the regulator, because MDSAP will not cover the Egyptian regulations, the South African regulations. And I want to make sure that everybody fully understands that. Thank you.
Any comments from our panelists regarding this point? Yes,
Can I add? So, like we said, we're using it as a form of reliance, right? Whereby if, for example, the example I made was a product that was manufactured in Health Canada and they submitted their MDSAP certificate to South Africa. It was easy for us as South Africa to engage also the Health Canada regulator through MDSAP, right? And which is why my call to action was that, in fact, since the regulators in Africa, currently we're still having different QMS requirements. There's countries requesting doing GMP inspections. There's countries going for ISO 13485. We all should be aligned in a way that then if, for example, if South Africa has done an ISO 13485 certificate for your company in South Africa and you want to export to Zambia, it doesn't make sense for Zambia to come back and do another audit for you.
Yes, but they're auditing to 13485 plus
Yes,
regulations.
exactly.
And remember, the technical documentation in Chapter 6 only covers 13485, which is QMS.
Correct, yes.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, and the gentleman was talking about an African mark. What we're looking for is if I register in Zimbabwe, I should be able to sell in South Africa, Namibia, Kenya. That's what we're looking for.
Yes, and
Thank
that's
you.
where the continental procedure plays quite a critical role. And hence, I think in the previous panel, they did mention that AMDF becomes a critical advocacy in that. And I think all of us in here, we have to also make sure that we speak the same language, and that through AMDF, which is currently being co-chaired by Egypt and chaired by Kenya through the AMRH, that they also hear that and they understand that. So it can become not just within the documents, but they can implement that fully and to full scale.
Indeed, yeah. And I believe the regulatory framework as well is a comprehensive process. So it's not only, we cannot, let's say, have a fragmented just site inspection. It has a full pre-market authorization review. It has post-market surveillance. So we cannot desiccate the system. It's comprehensive. So the main benefit is eventually to leverage the reliance. I believe we're off time. I'd like to thank my panelists for this great discussion. And I believe the message at the end of the session and potentially at the end of these 2 days that a shifting of mindset is required from all stakeholders in order to move things forward. And what I always like to use is that we need to move from the AAA, act as always, to AA, as adequate and appropriate. So regulatory agility, flexibility, like we need to look at things differently and work all together to make it happen in a better way. So thank you so much, and I wish you a great evening.
Thank you.